Hello again, and welcome back to my bedroom. Zits out like I give a heck. Let's talk about some creative coding. A few days ago, I was reading the Generative Design book, and I saw a really interesting quote. Tension is highest when order borders on chaos. What does this mean? To me, this means that your eye isn't drawn to one specific part of a painting. Have you ever looked at a painting and kind of stared at one point and it was kind of interesting, but the rest of the painting didn't really matter because there wasn't enough going on? One of the benefits of generative coding is that that's not really a problem. You can kind of just look at anywhere and see something interesting going on because it's not painted by hand. Because we're using code, everything can be slightly different or slightly off, but still have the same kind of general rule set, which allows you to make some really cool things. For example, normal images actually look really cool when you split them and kind of turn their edges into disarray. It kind of looks like you cut it up into a lot of little pieces of paper, and then you kind of just like lifted the square corners little by little and create these really cool effects. This technique is a fork of 2.1.2 of the Generative Design textbook. In order to use this technique, we're going to be introduced to 4 characters: the random function, image.get to get our pixel color, the grid, which is going to be super important for what we're doing, and the 4th thing. I guess I separated image and get in my notes here, so I guess 3 things. The algorithm looks something like this. We're going to load the image into processing, then we're going to create an XY grid. Then we're going to get a color at that pixel from the image and load that into the grid tile. Finally, we're going to distort the edges with the random function using our mouse. Using these tools, we'll get this result. Now, let's get into the code. So the first thing that we're going to do is load an image as a p-image. The p-image is a processing class that includes a lot of helpful methods like load image. So what load image does is it goes into our data folder. So it goes into our processing data folder and then gets out our image.jpg. So it loads in this case, a photo that I got from Unsplash, which is the mountain that you saw in the result. The next thing we're going to do is resize that image. So this is going to handle making sure that the image is the same size as the canvas. The next thing we're going to do is create an XY grid. So the easiest way to do that is to kind of say, okay, how many tiles by how many tiles do I want? So let's say that we want 250 tiles, which is 50 by 50. The first thing that we're going to want to do is figure out the tile width and the tile height. We can easily figure that out by dividing the width by the tile count and the height by the tile count. For this piece, I decided that the X and Y should be the same because we kind of want a square. You might occasionally want to do a rectangle, but it's kind of a bit harder to trace, but you can do what you want. So for int Y equals 0, while Y is less than the tile count and while X is less than the tile count, basically we're going to get the position X and the position Y. So what this is going to do is that X is going to be our rows and Y is going to be our columns. And we're going to multiply X by the width of the tile. And remember, the width of the tile is the width divided by the tile count. We'll talk about this later. This is kind of just shifting, but this is kind of our grid. So basically the rest of this code that you see here is the thing that we're doing to each tile by itself. The next step that we're going to want to do, and we're going to kind of jump out of order here a little bit, is get the color from the image pixel. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our position X and position Y, which remember are the X. So let's say 0 times 50, which is going to be 0, or 0 times 50, which is going to be equal to 0 or 1, and then move that down the XY or across the X's. Then we're going to take that color and we're going to fill the pixel with that. So the next thing that we did was that we added this conditional to make it a little bit more interesting. So if the Y row modulus 2 is equal to 0, meaning if the Y row is even, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a rectangular shape. And this rectangular shape is going to have the shifted vertexes that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But don't worry about that for now. It's just a shape. Else, we're just going to draw a static circle. And this static circle is going to be right in the middle of the tile. That's tile width divided by 2 and tile height divided by 2. It can be tile width or tile height. You might want to do an ellipse if you're doing rectangles because you're going to have a different viewport for width and height. Finally, we get the effect that we're looking for by shifting the vertex corners. So what's happening here is that we're taking our mouse X position. So wherever our mouse X is, if it's farther over to the right, then it's going to be a higher number. If it's closer to the left, it's going to be a lower number. So over here, where the cursor is, it would be like 0, 0, and over here it would be like 400. So 400 divided by 20 is 20 times a random like negative or positive value. So basically all it's going to do is move it to the left or right randomly. And the same goes for mouse Y, where it's going to move up and down randomly. So then what we're doing is we're just plugging in these vertex coordinates. It's really important when you're doing begin shape and end shape to draw it out like you would a square. So it's like kind of important to do the top left, then do top right, bottom right, bottom left. The reason for this is that this will create a full square. If you went top left, top right, bottom right, it would create a weird Z looking thing. And finally, we have two helper functions. So if we press S, it'll save a frame to our data so we can upload that file to Instagram or do something that we want with it. Or we can change our random seed. So basically, it's always going to be the same random every time we run, but you can actually make a new one by clicking the mouse using this mouse press method. And then we print it here because we might want to save that value for later.
And here it is, our final result. I hope you learned something today and enjoyed. You can find me on my Instagram at _Bramses and let me know if you use this technique. Thanks for watching.